top-down modeling is definitely something that will separate you from people when it comes to productivity and what you're able to create and how stable your models are. Hello, my name is Josh, and I'm an engineer with Forge Product Development. Forge helps clients start and grow their businesses by providing affordable access to effective engineering resources. Monday through Friday, we offer a free engineering helpline live on our social media platforms, where we help answer questions from people just like you. The clips that follow were taken from one of those sessions. I hope you find it useful and enjoy. So there's lots of different ways of doing top-down modeling. Basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a series of files that can pass information between each other and be very stable when it comes to solving and passing that information. Skeleton sketch modeling is a top-down modeling technique within Solidworks. And I'm going to kind of walk through what my workflow is when I'm doing this type of modeling, and then kind of talk about each step and why we do it along the way. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to do a new file, right? And you can do this. I have templates set up, obviously, but my templates are only really like my units and stuff like that. It's nothing fancy. So you can do it with the standard templates, but I'm going to use an assembly. So whatever assembly template you're using, you're going to create that. And then it's going to ask you to insert a part, and we're not going to do that. We're going to say no. And so what this is giving you, this is assembly file that you can create parts within that doesn't have any information in it, right? So what I would recommend is you're going to go in and you're going to save your assembly to wherever you're going to save it to. And that's going to help because the parts that you create within this assembly are going to want to reference the assembly's name. The next step is you're going to go insert components, and I use this little drop down part. You don't want to insert components, you want to make a new part. And I usually always select the front plane. And if you select the front plane, then your plane names will match. You'll see that this front plane is the same as this front plane, right? And they're actually coincident with each other. It's going to automatically give you a sketch on that front plane. If you don't want a sketch on your front plane, you can always just cancel out and select a different plane, but now you're within this part file, right? So let's say that we want to make like the classic box with a hole in it. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a sketch that has most of the information that we need, and then we're going to exit that sketch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to also create another sketch, and I'll show you how I'm using it later, but I'm going to create another sketch, and that sketch is going to have a series of lines in it. I want them to be vertical, and I want the midpoint to be horizontal to there. And then I'm just going to create another one here. And basically what I'm going to use these for later on is to set the length of extrusions. So it doesn't really matter where they are because I'm only really going to be using the endpoints. But then I could dimension everything. Obviously, best practice is to dimension everything and fully lock it down. But for the sake of this tutorial, it doesn't really matter. The steps are all the same. All right, so we have some information here in our first part. And instead of going like you normally would, you would go in and you'd start like modeling things in here, right? And we're not going to do that because what we're doing here is we're just creating a place at the very top of the assembly tree where we can store sketches and basically set the solve order of Solidworks to say, okay, assembly, part, these sketches solve first, and then everything below will solve as you go through it. So we have our part, we have some sketches within our part, and these are the skeleton sketches that are referenced in the name. So now we're going to make another part. We're going to make the pin. So we're going to do a block with a pin through it. So we're going to make another part. We're going to do the same thing that we did when we created part number one. We're going to do new part, drop down, new part. I'm going to select the front plane again. And that's just so that all my planes stay in the correct orientation, right? But we're not going to use this sketch. We're going to exit out of the sketch when you create part two. So what we have here, we have two sketches, and this has all the information that we need to make our pin in part two, but we don't have those sketches available in part two. Now, one thing you could do would be to just go in and say, okay, top plane sketch, and then convert entities, and you can grab the entities from this sketch directly from it and convert it into a part, right? And that's kind of like the basic way of doing it. And you can see that it's created this external reference by this little line and arrow symbol here. Basically, SolidWorks is telling you, hey, sketch number 2 contains an external reference outside of this part file. So that would work, but what I would recommend doing, which is a bit more stable, is you're going to select the sketch that you want to basically insert, and we're going to use derived sketch to insert it into this new part. So we're going to select the sketch from part 1 that we want to insert into part 2, and then we're going to select the plane that sketch, which is why it's kind of helpful to have names correct. You're going to select the plane that you want to insert it onto. At the same time, you're going to go insert and derived sketch. And what that does is it basically makes a link between part 1 and part 2, where within SolidWorks is saying, okay, we're taking sketch 2, the whole thing, and we're copying it to part 2. When that happens, you get the full sketch. And if you were to go in here and edit it, you'll see that it's blue. You can move it around, but you can't edit it. It'll let you move it, but not change the shape of it. We just want to pass the information between the two parts. So we're trying to make our pin. We've added this sketch, which is a copy of number 2. Now we need to add this sketch in to part 2 as well. You got to select this and select where you want it. Insert, derived sketch. If I hide this part, you can see that the sketches are still there. The sketches that we're seeing are within our part 2. You're always trying to model in a way that's consistent, and that if you open it up a year later, you can figure out what you were thinking when you did it. And one way that I model to try and leave myself these clues is that when you're using a skeleton sketch technique, you're never going to use these sketches to create features. An example of doing it the wrong way is if you go directly into creating features without creating that duplicate sketch. What's going to happen is we can create the exact same feature, but it's going to hide the derived sketch that we're using because it puts it within the feature. See how this boss extrude has now eaten our second derived sketch? That's why you want to try to always create a reference sketch from your derived sketch to create your features within it. Now we're going to model our pin. So we're going to select the top plane and we're going to make a sketch. And something that I did here that is really critical when you're doing skeleton sketch modeling is I use my isolate button and I just hit it and it hides everything else. So I know if I'm selecting an entity from a sketch, it's the local derived sketches, which is what we want. All right, so we're within this sketch 5 now, right? Which is what we're trying to do. We're going to convert the entity. We're going to convert this circle here. And that makes our circle. And then this circle is actually what we're going to use for our extrude feature. I want to control my length with these endpoints. And so we're going to do up to vertex. And then the other direction is going to be up to vertex as well. So now we can see that we made this pin using all the information from our derived sketches, and it keeps our derived sketch at the top of our tree. And then we have this kind of like, it's a duplicate sketch basically, but it's only duplicating the information we need to make the feature. We have our pin now, and we can exit isolating, and we can exit editing of this part. We're going to add in our block. So to do that, it's the same thing as adding the pin. The workflow is very consistent and repetitive. Front plane. Now we want to make sure that the sketches that we're going to derive in are from part 1. So what I like to do is I like to hide the other parts. So you can control click the main one, and then the part that you want to add them to, and again use the isolate command and it'll hide everything else. So we do sketch 2 on the top plane, insert derived sketch, front plane, insert derived sketch. And it's basically the same workflow. We're going to create a reference sketch for our block. See, I didn't do it that time. Okay. And that's the tricky part, right? When I went to make this new sketch, what I needed to do was I need to isolate part 3, because those derived sketches, there'll be copies of those in every part you do. And if you just are clicking on the screen and not isolating out the part when you're going to basically model in features, you'll start creating relationships between parts that solve in different orders, and that'll just crush your rebuild time and not be very stable. So again, just using the isolate hotkey to just go to part 3 after we make our derived sketches.
Explain a little bit more about that isolate?
Yeah, so what isolate does is it's basically a hotkey that says hide everything I'm not selecting. So for example, I can select part 2, and I have a hotkey set up on my 3D mouse that is the isolate command, and you can search it up here. And yeah, it's isolate components as like the name of what you're looking for. It's in the drop down. Oh, right there. The only reason I have it hotkeyed is because when you're building large assemblies with this, you are in and out of parts, in and out of parts, in and out of parts. So actually what I have set up is I have 2 hotkeys that are right next to each other on my mouse. So I can click a part, hit isolate, and then I can click the part again and hit edit part. So I can get in and out of parts without moving. Anyways, so if we go into this here and we just isolate this, so we isolate it so that when we go to make our reference sketch, we make sure that we're selecting from the correct locally derived sketches. And then we just do convert entities. Now we can do features, and we'll extrude. And we want to select that reference sketch, right? And then it's the same thing. We're just going to do up to vertex in either direction. So now we can kind of look at what we have, right? So we have our skeleton sketch part, which basically is the holding point for all of our sketches. And then we have these parts that we create from those sketches that we've derived in. And we can see that the features that we create and the reference sketches that we create as well don't have external links. See how they don't have those arrows, right? That's one good check. All of your features and all of your sketches should not have external links. The only external links should be in these derived sketch. So now it's really easy to go in and edit this. Like say we want to change the size of things, or I mean the location, whatever you want to do. But you can see that it all updates like almost instantly, right? There's no going in and setting, there's no going in and setting, saying, okay, I will have a 1-inch pin, and then I design a 1-inch pin and I insert that into the assembly, and then I design a cube with a 1-inch hole in it, and I put that in the assembly, and then I made them together. Well, that's fine, but this is much faster, and there's no oh, I updated the pin, but I forgot to update the block. Like they're pulling from the same circle, right? They're pulling from the same sketch actually, which is just saved in a place that's easy to access. So this is how I build pretty much everything now, if it's more than one part.